Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the best breakout session of the day. So I'm going to introduce myself, first of all. My name is João Barreiro. I'm the Global Chief Privacy Officer of Beijing. Beijing is a global biopharmaceutical company with over 10,000 employees listed in the New York, Hong Kong, and Shanghai Stock Exchange. We are focused on the development of drugs for the treatment of cancer. Like to keep myself busy on my free time, and I'm also part of the research advisory board of the IAPP, of the Data Transfer Expert Council, who is advising the UK government on international data transfers, and part of the board of directors of the International Pharmaceutical and Medical Device Privacy Consortium. In terms of the use of AI in our industry, it's a very interesting topic because actually 2 days ago, we have our first artificial intelligence steering committee in our organization. And we were actually looking into the fact that artificial intelligence is present on the entire pharmaceutical value chain. If there is an industry where artificial intelligence is present across all the value chain, is the pharmaceutical industry. Just to give you an example, drug discovery. I don't know if you know that, but it takes up to 15 years in average, and an average of 1.5 to 2 billion US dollars to bring a new medicine into the market. And by increasing the rate and the speed of new molecule discovery through predictive modeling over vast and diverse data sets, we can save money and speed up drug discovery. Some of you are alive today because AI helped to speed up the development of a COVID vaccine by speeding up the process of combining proteins and molecules. Another good example is supply chain and manufacturing. By enabling analytics to generate novel insights for identifying supply chain and manufacturing inefficiencies. Another good example, monitoring adverse events, artificial intelligence by processing high volume data sets that are decentralized and disparate in terms of adverse events, allow you to achieve efficient conclusions on how those medicines can cause harm potentially to patients. So I think those are some of the examples of artificial intelligence, in the pharmaceutical industry.
Hi, everybody. My name is Isabel Simpson. I'm a partner at KPMG, and I head up our data, digital, and technology practice for KPMG Law. So what our practice focuses on is advising clients in how to comply not only with data protection regulation, but all new upcoming digital regulation and how that could impact where they want to develop artificial intelligence as an example. So what we try to do is we try to bring in the right advisors to ensure that when, for example, organizations want to develop artificial intelligence for all of the right reasons, that they do that in a balanced and compliant way, thinking about not only data protection, but also human rights, consumer rights, IP, all of the other areas also that John mentioned in his keynote earlier on.
Maria.
Hello, hi. I am Maria. My background is in medical genetics. I'm a geneticist, and I'm the co-founder and chief scientific officer of DNA Nudge, which is a spin-out company of Imperial College. And what we have done is we have developed this. This is a cartridge that is technically a lab on a cartridge. So you can do a DNA test anywhere without needing a lab or specialized equipment or specially trained people to do it. And you can get the results in less than an hour. So we have two arms. We have a consumer arm, and we also have a medical diagnostics arm. And in the consumer arm, what we are doing is we try to tackle public health problems like obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases that they can all be prevented if you have the right lifestyle. And this is how it works. So the consumer goes to the retail. So they have a test on the spot. They don't need to send a sample over the post. And we screen for biomarkers that they interplay with nutrition. So we screen for all these biomarkers that interplay with type 2 diabetes, obesity, and so on. But instead of giving them a DNA report and saying this is the problem you have so-and-so genetic risk, we wanted to develop a very actionable, a point of decision technology. So you can use your mobile or wearable device to scan food and drink products and find if they are suitable for you based on your unique genetic risk. So we're using machine learning not only in order to understand genetics and how genes affect the development of different chronic diseases, but we also do it because we want to understand products and how the nutritional profiles work. That's obviously big data because we have hundreds of thousands of different food products, and also how the products affect the development of chronic diseases. So then we can put the two together and develop tools that the consumers can use in daily life in order to make the right choices for them.
Hello, I'm Philip Russmeyer. I'm currently the CEO and founder of FitFile. I'm German originally, so I've sort of got privacy by design built into me, as many Germans do. I've also, despite a largely misspent career in private equity investment banking, always held sort of moral principles guiding one's behavior, guiding the organizations that I've helped support as absolutely intrinsic to everything that I do. So at the moment at FitFile, we are deploying what we think is the strongest possible data access, privacy, and linkage solution. We do that for a variety of NHS organizations, we do that for private sector companies, and to the topic at hand today, precision medicine, as particularly precision healthcare, is very relevant because a lot of what we do is about actually prediction prevention, it's about the participation of individuals, and it's about the personalization as well. So, for me, the topic of AI is relevant in three ways in terms of the work that we do every day. The first is actually relatively prosaic. So the code that we develop in our platform to help make sense of all this data uses AI very efficiently for software bug testing, for example. So we have that built into the core of what we do. But then more in terms of the way that we travel with data, we also come up, it won't surprise many of you, I'm sure, against very messy, very unstructured data. And so NLP and other tools are really, really useful today in terms of making sense of that data. And then finally, on the output side of our platform, because of the way that we look to deliver the safest, fastest, most complete data, we really help with the onward processing, including AI, more often than not, more increasingly as well, very encouraging. So I have lots of perspectives on this topic today. Really excited to be here. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, the room.
Thank you. Hassan.
Thank you so much for having me. My name's Hassan. I've been billed as the commercial director for HDI UK. I'm not.
He's so much more.
Yeah. I'm the commercial director for the cancer hub of HDI UK. So HDI UK, Health Data Research UK, is the National Institute for Health Data Science. So Alan Turing is the National Institute for Data Science and AI, but HDI UK is the Health Data Science National Institute. It has 9 hubs. There's a clinical trial hub, there's a gut hub, there's an ophthalmology hub. I'm the commercial director for the cancer hub. Just forgive me, I needed to make that clarification. My background isn't really important here. What's important is that HDI UK has a mission. And the mission is that we have data in healthcare that we don't use. That data is trapped in silos. That data is not normalized. So each of these different silos of data can't be matched together. For example, the date of birth in one of them might be in a slightly different format to the other. So you have to do some work to transform them to put them together. We also have different modes of data. So your imaging is a mode. The data from your electronic patient record or your EHR or so on is going to be different to what's in your clinical notes, your unstructured written notes. These are all different modes. So how do we clean all of that data? And HDI UK, Professor Andrew Morris, who's in charge, has always said Big Bang won't work. What we should do is find projects that are commercially viable, get everyone involved, including patients, and when we work on these projects, we'll clean the data there and expand from those points of reference. So that's why you have a gut hub, an ophthalmology hub, and a respiratory hub, because each of these hubs are doing that work. So that's what we want to do in cancer. We want to become, and forgive me, I'm going to use a few big words here, We want to become multimodal, so we want to connect the deep molecular and genetic profiling. We want to get the samples from the tissue block, as well as the clinical notes, as well as the EPR, as well as the digitized pathology and the digitized imaging. All of these modes need to be connected and normalized, so multimodal. We also have to be, and this is important, federated, and which is a controversial word, where we don't move data. When we move data, we increase risk. We want the query to go to the data, rather than the data to move to the person asking the question. And that's why we are now looking at secure data environments, federated analytics, and that's why there's a big push to have not data collected into one place, but for them to be connected via pipelines. So those are the ambitions, and then that leads to the big things that we're looking for really is clinical decision support. And I'm going to say something controversial, I hope I don't get cancelled. Health systems around the world are a little bit like donkeys, carrying books on their backs. Tons of information, but they can't use them. They can't read them. So how do you get to the point where we become intelligent? You know, people say that we're data rich and information poor. But even if you had the information, you still need to be able to act on it. And that's unfortunately not something we're able to do at the moment. And patients are angry, they're livid. They're telling us, and our patient and public involvement engagement is saying to us, how dare you take data from me and not use it? How dare you not put me into the clinical trial? So we have a moral and ethical responsibility to use that data appropriately. Before we get into the ethics of how we use that data, and there are many of those things to discuss, we have to be ambitious about what we do. And that's what HDI UK is doing, and that's what I, as a commercial director for the Cancer Hub, am trying to do. Thank you.
That was really good. Thank you for bringing the patient into this. So I'm going to ask a question now about collection of healthcare data, and because that follows on after that point. And certainly we've got healthcare data being collected from lots of different sources, or being used from lots of different sources, I should say, after what you've been saying. And we really want to be able to use that data to help cure the diseases faster, to relieve the pain and suffering. But balanced against this, of course, we've got rights of individuals, and rights of individuals to have a say in how their data, relating to them, their own data, is being used. And so how do you balance that? So I'd like to explore this question with everyone here. Hassan, I'm going to come back to you because I'd like to start actually with Maria, because I think with what you do in your particular company and the way in which the data is being used, I think it's a good place to start.
Of course. Well, one of the problems we need to solve is, first of all, algorithmic bias. So this is something that exists in society, and it's not inherent in AI and machine learning. It's just amplified and further exacerbated. For instance, clinical trials for decades, only men were taking part, or in pharmaceutical research, and in genetics, majority of genome-wide association studies, they were performed in Caucasian population. So you have gender bias, you have population bias, and so on. And this is not only applying to the data we are using to train algorithms, it runs deeper. How we design research, how we design clinical trials, what questions we are asking, what diseases we decide to study, and back to the data, how we standardize data, how we curate data, how we clean it, and therefore how we disseminate data. And this is with regards to patients. Now, when you try to bring on board consumers, it becomes even more challenging because you have a very intricate balance. And going back to the word of the year, authenticity, we tried in the organization to develop a different way of tackling this problem. So we are saying, from the one hand, you have an issue, you have a problem that you try to understand. In our case, how genetics, how biomarkers can give us an insight into how we develop different diseases. And this is on one side, and of course, it comes with bias that comes from science and research. But then, on the other hand, is solutions and how we can develop better drugs or better interventions. Because even if we crack the problem and we think we find the solution, how we are going to implement it, how we are going to give it to the clinician, how we are going to give it to the patient, how we are going to give it to the consumer. So we decided to spend time not only understanding the biological problem, but also understanding the solutions. In our cases, products. Try to understand products, how products affect disease. And instead of saying, based on your data, we predict that you are more likely to develop obesity, therefore you should be having this diet, or you shouldn't be having crisps, you shouldn't be having chocolate, or if you have chocolate, this is the single product you should be having. So what we try to do is create options. Therefore, the consumers have the freedom of choice. And this is a very good thing, because one is that they get involved, which is important. Going back to what Hassan was saying, if patients don't understand how their data is going to be used to better medicine science, but also what's the benefit to them, then you lose them on the way. So one is we wanted consumers to get involved and have the freedom of choice, but also because we don't say this is exactly what you should be doing based on our algorithms, we are saying there is a range of options. So we give you a range of products and you can choose from. Then you also decrease bias, because now they are going to take it on board and they are going to make the decisions that they feel fit their lifestyle and their own personal preferences, and therefore it becomes much more sustainable. So it's more of a discussion rather than we put information in a black box that we call AI, out comes the solution, and stick to it.
Yeah. Education and choice. Philip, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this whole emphasis on the individuals is really important, because at the end of the day, as Hassan was saying, we've all been saying, I think, there are all these silos, right? And basically we have huge amounts of data also in non-clinical sources. You know, if you look at McKinsey, for example, say 50 to 60% of health outcome determinants actually have their data accumulating in non-clinical sources, and it's really important to bring that together with the sort of clinical data that DataCamp brings in, for example. So I think I'm sitting between two very relevant sources of data here, but more important than that as well is also the sheer volume of this, right? So we think we're going to see close to 1 terabyte of new data per person on average every year created very soon. And genomics is an important part of this, because I believe it's actually even a bigger contributor than YouTube to annual data creation now. So I'm led to believe that it's 20 to 40 times as much in terms of the exabytes per annum. And that's really important, because it's not just about connecting the silos, it's also about quickly curating the right data. Now, I completely agree that people get angry when their data isn't used for their and others like theirs betterment, but there is also another problem. And that problem is not necessarily the UK GDPR, the DPA, or the common law duty of confidentiality. It's the fact that when you don't keep people apprised, and when you share their data in identifiable form, even if that's technically pseudonymized, they can get very angry too. And that pseudonymization is a really useful way to, as many of you I'm sure will know, actually mask people's identity, but it's reversible. So yes, you can still link the data. Yes, you can work with it more safely than if it was purely identifiable, but it does have some problems. And if you look at, for example, I think it was last year, a BMJ article which asked 29,000 people in the UK, pre and post-COVID, how do you feel about your pseudonymized data being shared without your consent? 80 to 90% said, no problem if you share it with the NHS. 40 to 50% said, no way am I going to be happy with you, or 50 to 60% actually, will I be happy with you sharing it with anybody else, including bona fide third-party researchers like pharma companies, right? And then 15 to 20 if you're talking about tech companies, by the way, so nobody wants that. Now, this is really important, because in this country today, I am as much of a supporter of secure data environments as Hassan and others. However, there is a move at the moment to use Research Ethics Committee and confidential advisory group mechanisms to use things like Section 251 to effectively temporarily suspend individuals' rights to privacy. And that is something we need to all be very mindful of. I'm not saying I'm against it, but it is to be used very, very carefully. It was great during COVID, when we had the copy notices to quickly get on top of stuff. But if you look at the NHS Transformation Directorate on AI, which says anonymous data should be used for research and planning, and you should therefore not need a legal basis, that's much closer to what I think we should try to do whenever possible. So in our everyday work at FitFile, we can do pseudonymization, but we try to push towards this anonymization, because with the right de-identification protocol, I think you can ward off lots of the criticisms. And again, some of us on this panel have discussed this before. Yes, there are theoretical issues with anonymization, but it's actually a hell of a lot better than using pseudonymization. So I think that's really, really important when we think about the ethical dilemmas around what kind of data get used by whom.
I'm going to go to Isabel. Isabel, your view.
Thanks, Caroline. I think it was important to take away from John Edwards this morning, as he said, non-compliance with data protection will not be profitable. And I think what he also meant by that is it will not be permissible. This is a human right which is enshrined in law that has protections to protect people's personal information. So whilst the benefits are, of course, absolutely huge, and we can all see and have sympathy for those, they must be balanced with those rights, and they must ensure that organisations developing AI are held accountable, not only for the right of the individual to know how their data is being processed, but the transparency of what is happening with the data. That data collected for one purpose, there is a purpose limitation principle that has to be complied with. There is a data minimization principle that also needs to be complied with. And as well as data protection laws, there are other laws as well in play here that we do need to consider. And it is absolutely fundamental that if organisations want the public to trust the AI that they have developed, that they must only input into that AI the personal information that they are allowed by law to input into it, and more than by law, by ethics as well. So there is a very strong and compelling argument around use of AI in this sector. I think probably more than any other, because we are looking at life-saving techniques and medicine, but that has to be balanced with the protection of the right of privacy as well.
Fabulous. Hassan.
I think we have to be careful. We are mixing up real-world data and clinical trials. So let's just call it data for health and life sciences. Across that whole spectrum, there's a series of issues. The first is that patients believe, honestly, that they own the data, whether they do or not. And we've never been clear with them. So in the NHS, and this is a thought experiment that I'd like you to go through for a second. The NHS organisation has paid for the MRI, paid for the CT scanner, paid for the X-ray. So does it not have some hold on that newly transformed data? The patient clearly does too. So there should be some form of partnership and conversation between the two. And far too often, we get people who are strident saying one or the other, and it can't be. It's got to be a connection. And so DataCan, the organisation that I represent, has patients and public involvement and engagement at the very heart, where we have a kill switch. Patients can kill any project. They're on the leadership, they're on the strategy, they're on the steering. And it must be that way going forward, because if we lose the trust of citizens, then we lose their participation, their engagement, and everything falls apart. And we've seen that happen to varying degrees across the world, where projects have happened and patients have said, no decision about me without me. And that's how it must be. So when it comes to life science organizations, and they say they want to work with that data, patients are justifiably nervous and skeptical because of the history. And there has definitely been problems in the past. So what needs to happen is an intermediary, and that's where we want to position HDI UK as the intermediary between the patient, the citizen, the carer, the health system, the clinician, the academic, even the non-clinical researcher, and industry. So HDI UK is trusted in order to be the intermediary. So it can say to both sides, we will look after this for you. And that's why what is now NHS England, but was NHS Digital, the team that looked after cancer data, they have a national TRE, a trusted research environment, and that has cancer data within it, a national cancer TRE. And DataCan has the contracts to do the analysis of that cancer TRE. So industry can come to us and say, can we work with you on that data? But it's DataCan that's doing the analysis. Do you see what I mean? There's a barrier. There's a way for people to feel trust and safety because there's an organisation in between that has the remit. And that's where HDI UK sits. So organisations, vendors, innovators can come to HDI UK and we can send them to the right hub and then we can get them connected with the patient and public involvement group for each hub, because each one does. And that's what we see as the future. It has to be in collaboration and partnership.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, one of the things I do want to explore is around regulation and innovation. And just, we've talked quite a lot this morning about regulation. There's various discussions this afternoon around it, but actually does it stifle innovation? So I'm going to start first of all with Shao, and in terms of really exploring this a bit, and in terms of your point of view about within organisations, how do you encourage, how does the organisation have the culture of encouraging innovation, but also in a safe way, a legal way, an ethical way?
I think this topic brings us to discussion around what's the difference between data ethics and data privacy. And the answer is moral obligations. Data ethics looks into the moral obligations when processing personal data. So it's a broader concept that goes beyond compliance with privacy laws. And some of the key questions that our industry, the pharmaceutical industry, faces when looking to moral obligations of processing personal data are: will the pharmaceutical industry use my personal data to develop medicines that I cannot assess or afford? Will the pharmaceutical industry have my personal data, and could this affect my access to healthcare? Will new analysis methods exacerbate sociality, inequalities, and bias? And the reality of it, yes, it can. If when I am developing a medicine on the R&D stage, if I don't ensure that underrepresented groups are not part of those clinical trials, I may end with a medicine that is not going to treat those underrepresented groups, or that is going even to exacerbate those inequalities. So I'm going to pick up on the topic of trust. I didn't attend John Edwards' speech, but he spoke about trust. And trust is key. If patients do not think that that I have very high ethical standards when developing my clinical trials, when commercializing my medicines, they are not going to enroll on my clinical trials. They are not going to buy our medicines. So trust is a key topic. So I look to data ethics as well as a business enabler, as a competitive advantage that an organization can have vis-a-vis its competitors. And I was recently involved in some discussions actually internally where someone asked me, look, why should I have a data ethics framework in place in my organization when my competitors actually do not have, a data ethics framework in place? And I think the answer is competitive advantage of business enabler, all associated with the trust component of it.
Thank you very much. That's really valid points there. I'm aware how many minutes have we got left? 1 minute. 2 minutes, okay. Now this has flown by. I would have liked us to be able to talk on for longer, as I think we were just getting into some really meaty topics, but we've got to stop now. So I wanted to ask each of the panellists to come and tell you one practical thing about how AI can be controlled effectively within organisations. So big question. We've got about 30 seconds each to answer it. So, Gerald, do you want to start again?
I think governance, for me, that's the key topic. You open your LinkedIn in these days, and you see the amount of job ads that combine AI, ethics, and privacy. So creating those roles and responsibilities, accountability, and also, if you think it is suitable, and I think it's suitable, also create a governance committee that looks into data ethics and artificial intelligence, because I don't think this is the role of just privacy or global technology solutions. So it's a collaborative effort here.
Thank you. Isabel?
Well, as you've taken governance, I think accountability from the top of the organisation. So we've seen a lot of tension between those who technically want to push forward on innovation and those who are leading the business and who should be leading in this area. And I think accountability from at board level on the opportunity, but also the risk, the ethical implications, the costs to society, all of these areas need to be owned by at board level and then flow down into the governance structure that Jared just spoke to.
Thank you. Maria?
I worked what Joao and Isabel said, but not only from top down, but the bottom up. So build AI teams that they are very diverse and they are multidisciplinary. I think it's important to reduce bias, be transparent and honest, otherwise we cannot learn and we cannot improve. And get non-technical people involved, and this is how we can bring hopefully more patients and also consumers on board.
Thank you.
I'll try and give you two in the 30 seconds I have. One is we found in practical experience there's a lot of good frameworks out there. So the UNESCO Ethical Impact Assessment, the ICO guidance on AI, the forthcoming MHRA guidance on AI for medical devices. Don't just use them, actually offer to support. It's actually quite often possible to input into these. Secondly, test your algorithmic fairness, because actually you have to include diverse and inclusive programming groups into what you're doing to make sure that if you then do that with the right sort of volume and type of anonymized data, you actually can genuinely nowadays actually synthesize and simulate very well to make sure that you're treating fairly the people and the data.
Thank you. And Hassan?
Thank you. I think we are not ready to have the level of assessment and deployment of AI that we need. We cannot enable the deployment of AI without digital clinical trials. We need to make sure that the procurement of AI algorithms is done in a fair and transparent manner when we don't have, if you like, the capability or capacity in many parts of the health system to do that judgment. Therefore, we need to find special rules around AI because there is a huge risk. Algorithmic bias, drift, diversity in data, all true. But there's harm. There's actual harm that we can do to citizens and patients. Therefore, we need to beef up what we do with AI. Otherwise, we risk a massive failure.
Thank you very much. So, some big things to think about there. I want to say thank you very much to every one of my panellists. It's been a really amazing discussion. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.